We're now going to start thinking outside the box and try to think of ways that we could propose new ideas to come up with solutions to the problems we've been talking about. We're going to discuss innovation. What exactly will change the game in energy matters? Where could breakthrough innovation come from? And how are big companies positioning themselves on innovation? We're going to discuss these questions with a 360 degrees open approach with some quite surprising ideas, some companies which have innovated in surprising areas, you'll see. Unexpected solutions. So let's welcome them onto the stage. Please welcome Occo Roelofsen, Steve Crane, Val van Lierop, and François Badoual. Thank you very much to all four of you. We're doing a little bit in French and in English. Thank you for being with us today. We have four top-tier experts here on innovation. You have different viewpoints on innovation by your position and your achievements. First of all, let me introduce you. Steve Crane, you're a co-founder and CEO of LightSail Energy, a startup that developed a breakthrough technology in energy storage in which Total itself is a stakeholder. You entered the MIT at 16 and you're a veteran of 5 startups, no less, and have shipped more than $1 billion in products during your career. I think that deserves a big round of applause, don't you? It sounds to me like quite an achievement. I'll have to applaud you all now. Val van Lierop, you're co-founder, president, and CEO of Chrysalix Energy Venture Capital, who Total is a partner with too. You've been directly responsible for raising more than $1 billion for early-stage technology ventures. You'll have to applaud all of them now for this venture. François Badoual, you're the Total Energy Ventures CEO, the corporate venture entity of Total, which supports the growth of promising startups that can offer Total innovative technology and business opportunities. Voilà. Applaudissez-le parce qu'il est de Total. And last but by no means least, Occo Roelofsen, you are Director Global Oil and Gas Practice McKinsey, and you contributed to a recent McKinsey study that pointed out 12 innovations that will change the world. There we are. Well, please applaud you, and this will be time for you to go onto the stage because you're going to start off our roundtable with a 10-minute keynote speech, which I'm sure other guests would like to react to afterwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited. Only in 2 weeks' time, I will get my first car that drives like a sports car. It does 0 to 100 in just over 4 seconds. It has always online capability. It gives me access to every internet radio station all the time. And during breakfast, I can switch on the car to let it heat up during the winter time or cool down during summer. So how did I tell my wife about this? I also told her that it seats 7 people, that actually you can also drive it as a comfortable family car, and actually you could see that despite the fact that it's a very fast car and that it's a family car, there are ways in which this car is very special. So before you start thinking, I'm a car salesman, this is an all-electric car made by the firm Tesla, a company that nobody has heard anything about until just a few years ago. And now they've created a family car that drives like a sports car and actually could get me from Amsterdam to Paris without any recharging in a single day. So that's for me what innovation really means. I'm very excited about it. So innovations that change the world for us in the daily life. That was the question that we had when we wrote the report around disruptive technologies. We selected more than 100 technologies, and in the end of the day, we came to around 12 where we thought would really have an impact on the daily life around us. On the screen, you can see all of them, and I won't go in detail through all these technologies, but what you can see is they come from internet, from telecoms, but also from the energy world, and I will talk more about those, as well as from medical research, as well as from things like 3D printing and manufacturing. Now, let me talk about a few of these technologies in a bit more detail to give you an understanding of why they are so special. First of all, as an example, let's talk about autonomous driving vehicles. Did you know that around 300 hours of our time on average in Europe we spend driving our cars? 750 hours in the case of our American colleagues. If you could say spend that time doing work instead, or staying home while your children go to sports in your car, wouldn't that make a difference on your personal lives? Another example is 3D printing. This is not a future technology, it's something that's happening already. Boeing is making hundreds of parts of its airplanes with 3D printing, and already consumers are using 3D printing at home. The Internet of Things, also that is not future anymore, when our fridge talks to our microwave, those kind of things. It is already happening in warehouses across the world, and it's also happening, for example, in the case of garbage can collection routes, as this example illustrates. And last but not least, in the area of healthcare, personalized genome treatment, genome-based treatment could really make a difference in life expectancy of cancer patients. Being McKinsey, we try to put some numbers on these technologies. So what kind of impact would it have by 2025? One thing I know for sure, these numbers are wrong. But at least it's an estimate of what could happen by 2025. The numbers that you see per technology are an estimate on the annual impact, on continuous economic impact in trillions of dollars. This is not billions, trillions of dollars. So if I take the autonomous vehicles as one example, how do they create 200 billion to 1.9 trillion in impact by 2025? Well, think about it. We estimate that by the end of this decade, we will see the first semi-autonomous or fully autonomous vehicles, trucks and cars on the road. That would mean hundreds of hours of time saved for those that own one of those cars. But it also means that the cost of transport with trucks, with taxis, go down rapidly. That's all money that you can spend on other things. It also means that probably the number of accidents will go down. This year, 1 million people will die in traffic. 70 to 90% of those deaths are related to human errors. It is believed that autonomous vehicles reduce the number of human errors. Last but not least, there's actually fuel benefits. They drive more economically. So that's one idea. If you add it all up, you get to staggering amounts of impact. And just to put this in perspective, the lower end is roughly equal to the GDP of the United States, and obviously several times the GDP of France. One thing that struck me when I was preparing for today's introduction is that the energy-related technologies around storage, unconventional gas and oil, and renewables are relatively small in this bigger scheme of things. How is that possible? Largely, we believe it's due to two factors. First of all, the speed of innovation in energy, and secondly, it's the sheer size of the energy industry. So first of all, let's think about the normal innovation cycle. Granted, this is a simplistic view of the world, but if you think about going from idea to prototype, to field test, to commercial, and to really rolling out an idea, we've seen 3, 4, 5 versions of the iPad in a matter of a few years. And consumer products in general have a pretty quick life cycle. Medicine is known for taking more time, and for example, shaping innovations in the telecom industry that really changed the face of the earth, such as ADSL, also took a bit longer. But if you look at E&P, exploration and production, one of the parts of the energy industry, then actually the picture looks quite different. This is based on 15 very different technologies. It took on average around 30 years from idea to full commercial implementation. How's that possible? Well, first of all, this is an industry that works with very big numbers. So in order to change something, you better be very sure about what you're doing. Secondly, a lot of the field testing around, for example, gas and oil fields take a lot of capital, but also have real safety and operations implications. So that's one part of the coin. The other part is a lot needs to happen before innovations to really take off. And yet another conceptual way of thinking about innovation is it all starts with the mystical good idea in the laboratory, a real breakthrough of something. Think about the batteries for the electric vehicles, the lithium-ion battery. But then, of course, there needs to be an ecosystem. And in the case of energy, energy innovations operate in a system with grids, gas grids, electricity grids, systems around storage, and systems where hundreds of billions need to be spent. As a proxy, globally, the energy industry spends 1,000 billion in capital every year just to grow roughly 1.5% per year in terms of its size, and a few percent of replacement of old equipment. Secondly, regulatory elements. We've seen the debate in Europe and in the world around carbon, around CO2. Every government has their own regulatory effects of that. Look at the example of my electric car. Why did I buy my electric car? Well, it's a great idea, but think about also what happened in Amsterdam, the city where I live. They put electric charging stations everywhere. The second thing they did is they put a big financial incentive for me to buy it. And last but not least, I personally thought it was a very good idea because I actually really enjoy driving this thing. So my personal behavior fits with the product. And if all of those magical ingredients are in place, then you can really take off. And in the case of energy, we simply see it just takes a bit longer. To illustrate this for the energy industry, two short examples. I guess most of you in the room recognize this iconic picture of the last years, the shale gas boom in the US. Actually, this is also largely driven from innovation. This is one shale basin which saw incredible growth, but actually started its first production already 30 years ago. And through a series of innovations, it actually worked out that they were able to accelerate incredible amounts of drilling, leading to the boom that we see today. Did you know that just through this boom, the US is experiencing a few $100 billion per year of economic stimulus by the sheer size of just reducing the gas price from around $8 to $4. That's a quite big impact in just a relatively short amount of time. Solar, another example that illustrates the impact of subsidies, my second perspective. And this is a picture of Spain, which started to give subsidies. And you see after the economic crisis hit them in 2008, and the subsidies reached an all-time high, they stopped giving subsidies, and look what happened with the construction of solar. Now, solar technology is luckily so far advanced that actually by now it can stand on its own legs, and we've seen the first solar farms without any subsidies. Now, rounding off my introduction, I'd like to share a thought experiment we did in McKinsey. We have our own energy perspective, which brings together the demand and supply of all the different sources of energy together. And we've developed a reference case, which essentially says we keep on doing what we do today with what we expect in terms of technological development over the coming decades. And we roll that out to 2050. I'll share in a second what that looks like. But the thought experiment we then did is to say, what could be the technologies that really make a difference on the time scale with all the difficulties around the energy industry that I just mentioned? First of all, you could see enormous reduction in solar costs, even beyond what we now see in the industry, as well as with wind. Thirdly, and you'll see that's probably one of the most important, it's around energy efficiency. It's probably one of the most underrepresented parts of solving our energy puzzle globally, and something that we've only come to appreciate over the last few years in a real way. And if you would say change the energy efficiency from 1% per year to 1.7%, which seems like a trivial change, but has enormous impact. And fourth point, shale gas. Let's say that the US success can be repeated elsewhere. The other areas we took away in a sense as being too far away to have a material impact on the time frame that I just mentioned. So let's take a look at what that means. So first of all, today, 2010, this is roughly what our energy mix looks like globally, primary energy demand. Liquids is basically oil, coal, gas, largely based on hydrocarbons, as we know today, with a certain part of renewable energy. Rest is renewable energy systems. Then, if we look at the reference case in 2050, essentially it will go on in the current way. You do see a bigger part of renewables, just driven by the normal economic development. We're largely based on fossil fuels still. The technology breakthrough, however, completely changes that picture. And again, we've taken some pretty radical assumptions, but I thought this was a good day to give you some evidence of this thought experiment, that actually the total amount of energy that we ask barely grows, largely driven by energy efficiency, as well as driven by the fact that renewables have a very efficient factor, because the energy you do produce in wind, for example, is one-on-one electricity, whereas with a coal-fired power plant, you have an efficiency of, say, 50% or 55% or so. So that's the two effects that you see there. And of course, within power generation, the effect becomes even stronger. Today, 21,000 terawatt hours, 20% renewables. In the reference case, we already believe it's 50%. In a technology breakthrough, it even grows to 60%. In order to make those things happen, you will need many, many different changes in the ecosystem. Storage facilities, networks that allow for these things, and probably changing consumer patterns. Last but not least, the impact on carbon. Today, we emit around 30 gigatons of CO2. In the reference case, that would go up slightly. But in the technology breakthrough, that would actually drop significantly. So this is a way where technology, where innovation could really make a difference for us. So personally, I'm excited. This is me in my new car. So I look forward to the early Christmas present. And thank you all for listening. And let's innovate.
Thank you very much indeed, Occo. Right, now the three of you, you've been listening to that. The potential game changer innovations that you bet on. Val, since 2001, Chrysalix has been investing purely in clean energy solutions.
Yeah, well, actually, first and for all, I should say here in Paris, excusez-moi pour mon français, ce n'est pas bien. Je préfère parler anglais ou hollandais, mais depuis 20 ans, j'habite en Vancouver, Canada. And in Canada, in Vancouver, more than 30% of the people speak Chinese. And that part of the population is growing very, very rapidly. Chrysalix, we are a matchmaker. Yeah, we are a VC, but we are actually a matchmaker between, on the one hand, companies with breakthrough innovations in the energy space, and on the other hand, large corporations who have the scale and the path to market. We are known to be a key player in clean tech. Now, some of you may say clean tech, but I mean, I agree with Occo. There is a bright future in clean tech. We actually see an enormous transition in the clean tech space. It used to be a space where people pushed technologies into the hands of early adopter customers who were willing to pay a premium for green or clean. You are in energy. That's a commodity industry. In a commodity industry, cost is king. Nobody pays a premium for a very long time. So what we see now is that many technologies are starting to become ready for prime time. It is not a niche industry any longer, clean tech. It is something that really is starting to become very important for a large organization. Occo mentioned solar. Some of you will say, Solindra, Mia Soleil, all these companies that cannot stand on their own feet without subsidies. Go to a car museum. Look at a nice Bugatti. Marvel about the blue color of that car. That company went bankrupt. 100 years ago, there were 100, 150 car companies only here in Europe. Now there's maybe a dozen left. That is what you see when industries mature. You get a consolidation process. And only the strongest will survive. So what Chrysalix increasingly is doing, that is what you see on the screen, is we are focused on sustainable innovation for large industries in transition. And it is all about bringing costs down, reducing the energy intensity, and reducing the environmental footprint. And that's important for many resource-based industries like oil and gas, power and utilities, chemicals and materials, mining and metals, and of course also for the ABBs, the Siemenses, the automation and manufacturing companies that are servicing these large companies. I would like to give you a few examples of where clean tech really starts to play a cost-effective role. What you see here is GlassPoint. A few years ago, we went out of solar because we did a nice IPO, and 5 years ago, I took all the Chrysalix money off the table in solar. Call it foresight or call it luck. Luck is very important in the VC industry, but we, in that way, survived the downturn in the solar space. A few years ago, we went back into solar. Why? Because Solar 2.0 had arrived. What is Solar 2.0? It is not every solar fits the same solution any longer. It is solar for very specific things. So GlassPoint is a company that produces steam for the process industry, in particular for enhanced oil recovery in the Middle East. To replace natural gas, what is normally used to heat up the soil, to get up the heavy oil out of the bottom of the reservoir. It makes total sense from a cost point of view. In Oman, where this thing is currently in production, natural gas trades for $14 to $15 per MMBTU. The solution, the solar solution that GlassPoint offers to replace natural gas is a $4 equivalent. So this is cost effective, it reduces the energy intensity, and it reduces the environmental footprint. If you allow me, another example that we have is in the mining space, a company called MineSense. Mining, like oil and gas, has the good quality reserves long since gone. So everybody is doubling in B and C quality reserves. Goldcorp, the largest gold mining corporation in Canada, they told me that these days they hit less than a gram of gold in a ton of rock. And every day they move 100,000 tons of rock. Imagine for a moment 100,000 tons every day. So there comes MineSense. MineSense brings ruggedized sensors to the actual scoop of the mining equipment. So that the person, the girl or the guy who takes a scoop of rock, in real time gets a read, is this rock worthwhile to haul up and send down the road to the mill for crushing and further processing, or do we simply lay it aside? The net result of that is enormous productivity gain, an enormous reduction of diesel. The mining industry by far is the largest diesel consumer in North America, and an enormous reduction of water use. So again, these three elements, cost reduction, energy intensity savings, and environmental issues play a role there.
Right. Perfect. Steve Crane, let's go on to LightSail, which, if I can remind everybody, is a startup energy technology company in the San Francisco Bay Area. You set it up in 2009. Tell us about your product line.
So our first product line is an energy storage system at megawatt scale that uses compressed air as the storage medium. And there are many ways to store energy, of course, and at the smaller scales, most of the research has gone into electrochemical batteries. Compressed air, although it's clearly low cost and will last for decades, it's a mature technology and obviously very clean compared to a lot of other technologies, has had one major drawback that's prevented its widespread adoption. And that is its low round-trip efficiency. And I'm told that this group would welcome some technical details, so I'll talk a little about how we handle the problem of efficiency in compressed air. Really, the basic problem is thermodynamic, in that when you compress air, if you've ever used a bicycle pump, you'll note that it gets very hot, and as you get to higher pressures, higher compression ratios, it gets very hot indeed. So if you don't capture that heat in some fashion and hold on to it and then return it when you're delivering the energy again later, that's lost energy, and that ultimately ends up as low round-trip efficiency. So we are addressing that problem. And the approach to doing it is really very, at least conceptually, very simple, which is we spray water into the compression cylinder. So if you see in the diagram, there's a reciprocating piston in a cylinder, as in a typical industrial gas compressor. And normally if you were to compress the dry air in this way, temperature would rise hundreds of degrees and would be very hard to manage. So instead we spray water in, and we're compressing essentially a thick fog. And the temperature of that mixture, because the heat capacity of water is so high, rises only a few degrees. And so it's low temperature, it's much easier to manage. So we essentially turn the electricity that is used to run the air compressor into compressed air and warm water, which we can hold on to indefinitely. And then the other innovation is when you want the energy back at a later time, you run it backwards. The air expands, would normally cool down rapidly. Instead, you spray the warm water that you've saved, and that enables the air to expand with more energy, delivers more power. And we should be able to achieve about a 70% round-trip efficiency using this system without any additional added heat. So next slide is what it looks like. So this is our prototype, and although we've been working on it for 4 years, I hope we can beat that 30-year introduction cycle that Occo mentioned earlier. We've at least gotten to a prototype a little bit quicker, and we should be getting to our first field trials with this in about a year. It's about a half a megawatt, and we can exceed 20-to-1 compression ratios with each of 2 stages to get to over 200 bar when we're storing it. And the other part of the technology is the air storage containers. So these are large composite vessels, we'll see in the next slide, that can be put in a shipping container form factor and moved around. And this really addresses the other big issue with energy storage. Is the most successful energy storage technology to date, of course, is pumped hydro storage. And it's great technology. It's very efficient. It's low cost. It lasts for a long time. But it is limited very much in terms of the geographical locations where you can put it and the scale that it can operate at. With these essentially giant scuba tanks to put the compressed air in, we can put it anywhere at low cost. And ultimately, once we finish our field trials, we'll work hard to drive the cost down and try to get to that pumped hydro price point of maybe $1,500 per kilowatt.
Perfect. Okay, right. François Badoual va parler en français, je crois. Donc l'innovation chez Total est quelque chose de très large. En quelques minutes, l'innovation chez vous, c'est quoi?
Oui, je dirais tout d'abord que l'innovation est une priorité de tous les métiers chez Total. Les canaux d'innovation sont multiples, à commencer par la recherche-développement, où nous consacrons des sommes importantes. Dire aussi que nous pouvons citer les coopérations multiples avec les organismes de recherche publics ou parapublics, avec les entreprises, avec les universités, les écoles d'ingénieurs. Tout cet écosystème contribue à l'innovation. Je vais vous parler plus précisément maintenant de Total Energy Ventures, en anglais le Venture Capital de Total, que je dirige, et qui est une nouvelle carte dans le jeu de l'innovation pour le groupe. Alors, sa mission consiste à accompagner les startups innovantes d'intérêt pour Total. Et il s'agit souvent de technologies de rupture qui présentent ou bien des opportunités de business, de partenariat business, ou bien un fort potentiel d'amélioration de nos opérations, et notamment à travers les volets environnementaux ou de sécurité industrielle. Alors, les domaines dans lesquels nous investissons, nous parions finalement, sont vraiment au cœur du futur énergétique, puisqu'on a parlé aujourd'hui de presque l'intégralité du scope de notre activité, avec les biocarburants, et ce depuis 2009, le solaire, toutes les nouvelles formes d'énergie qui apparaissent, mais aussi le recyclage ou la transformation des déchets en énergie, les mécanismes de réduction des gaz à effet de serre, et puis je pourrais citer bien sûr le stockage d'énergie avec LightSail notamment. Thanks Steve. Oui, on a aussi le traitement de l'eau, en sachant que pour Total, souvent, on traite 2 volumes d'eau pour un volume de pétrole. Donc tous ces sujets s'appellent d'un vocable clean tech, mais ce n'est pas tout. Nous regardons aussi, parce que nous n'avons pas la vision qui opposerait les énergies traditionnelles aux énergies nouvelles. Au contraire, nous pensons qu'il peut y avoir convergence, complémentarité entre elles. Et pour cela, nous soutenons aussi des entreprises dans le cœur de notre métier, et récemment, notamment en matière d'exploration-production. C'est ce qu'on appelle le produire mieux. Voilà. On peut aussi considérer que les changements que nous voyons dans les modes de production ou de consommation vont remettre en cause ou en question les visions que nous avons de notre business traditionnel et des modes notamment de transformation de l'énergie. Et de ce point de vue-là, il ne faut certainement pas se tenir à l'écart de ce que pourra être la ville demain, de ce que peuvent être les nouvelles technologies de l'information appliquées à l'énergie. On parle des smart grids, du big data notamment. Je mentionnerai aussi la mobilité durable, qui est un sujet qui évidemment nous intéresse. Alors à ce jour, Total Energy Ventures a réalisé 12 investissements, dont 3 dans des fonds, one of them being Chrysalix, thanks Wall. Et puis, notre mode de participation est finalement, en étant au conseil d'administration de ces startups, souvent de faciliter la relation, de réussir à explorer ensemble des partenariats possibles, et donc d'avoir finalement des nouvelles opportunités pour permettre à cette innovation externe d'intégrer le groupe. Et si vous voulez, par exemple pour LightSail, où Total est le premier industriel au capital, cette solution de stockage par compression d'air peut être, de notre point de vue, la plus efficace au monde si les développements technologiques sont au rendez-vous. Voilà, donc investir dans des sociétés nous permet en fait de travailler en coopération avec de multiples acteurs du financement de l'innovation. Ces organismes nous permettent finalement de nous ouvrir à des influences que si nous travaillions davantage en restant finalement sur des problématiques internes, ne nous permettraient pas d'appréhender. Donc c'est tout le principe de la logique de l'open innovation.
Okay, perfect. Now, each of you has presented your company. Unfortunately, we've only got 10 minutes left in this roundtable for the next questions, so we're going to do this one-sentence answers. So give me your criteria to identify something that is a breakthrough innovation in one sentence. Val, a breakthrough innovation, what is it?
It needs to be something that really solves a big problem. A big problem of a large corporation. So this is it needs to be something that can scale to something very big, but at the same time also you need to realize that very often it's not just about technology, it's also about the people who can make the innovation happen.
Right.
Team often is the team.
Steve, cost.
Yeah, so
In the microphone.
sorry, so yes, any innovation needs to be low enough cost that it doesn't need subsidies in order to survive, and that it can be scalable very rapidly.
OK, François, l'innovation.
Pour repérer des startups qui sont susceptibles d'avoir une innovation de rupture, on regarde bien sûr la qualité de l'équipe qui va permettre cette innovation, la différenciation de technologie, et puis évidemment le potentiel économique et la capacité à se développer. Donc elles sont très très larges et on essaye d'être au rendez-vous des plus prometteuses.
Well, what would be interesting is to ask you two gentlemen, you work with Total. What is Total's role in your activity, Steve?
So Total participated in our last funding round just about a year ago. So they sit on our board of directors and we talk frequently, but I think the real connection will come when we're ready to bring our product to market.
Okay, Val, what about Total's?
Total really is part of our ecosystem. We work with very large corporations and interact with them to understand what type of changes they need, what type of innovations they are after, what type of pain points they have in their organization that we can help solve, and then we go sourcing for deals.
Would you say generally that big corporations have a positive attitude to innovation, or does innovation always come from the smaller companies and work its way up into the huge bureaucracies and reticences of the bigger organizations?
Well, the issue here is Occo gets a new car. Could the Tesla have been developed by a large organization? I mean, I've had for a long time the discussion, was even the Toyota Prius, was it possible to develop that in a North American company where every CEO looks at its screen to check its stock price every 15 seconds? So, I mean, this is really a big problem. So, I mean, there is really a need here to try to find how we can match all the positive of the innovative breakthrough companies and the large corporations. And it is both, again, technology as well as its people. Let it be no mistake. Many people who are working in these small enterprises, these innovative companies, would not be able to pass the first sniff test of your HR department.
The first what? The first sniff test?
Of your HR department.
Right, okay. Steve, how do you pass the sniff test?
Well, no, I think that is a good point, that large companies are very good at vetting ideas, on doing due diligence on ideas, and they're very good at killing bad ideas, but unfortunately they also have the tendency to kill more good ideas than they should. And small companies are, and sometimes venture capitalists are not nearly so good at that, or perhaps just are willing to take the leaps of faith. That said, some big companies can innovate very well. I worked with Nike recently, the apparel company. Their innovation is deep in the sinews of the company, and it comes right from the top, and it's part of their culture.
Yes, go ahead.
Can I add a few comments? I think this is actually really the issue of the energy industry. Because the small guys innovate, but the large guys have the money. And this is an industry that needs hundreds of billions to just have a 1 or 2% impact on the global energy system. So what do you do? And I think what you're doing in Total and in other places, partnering up in venture capitalist ways, in creative ways between the small and the big players, that is the way to go. And I think the industry is embracing that.
Okay, François, Total.
Oui, pour le groupe, c'est certain que pour se préparer aux innovations de rupture, il faut réussir à ne pas être un fast follower, mais en fait à être un acteur de premier niveau. Et pour ça, c'est certainement de garder à l'esprit que les innovations ne sont pas simplement technologiques ou business, mais elles sont aussi comportementales, organisationnelles, managériales. En fait, c'est tout un système entrepreneurial qui est à mettre en place, comme l'ont dit les prédécesseurs. Et pour ça, on essaye évidemment de mettre en place tout un tas de mécanismes de veille, d'écoute, de capacité à se remettre en cause.
Quel genre de mécanisme?
Eh bien, par exemple, à travers les Total Energy Ventures, on screen, on a les capacités de veille. On a aussi en interne des prix de l'innovation, on en a 7. On a également des soutiens d'aide à la stimulation de l'entrepreneuriat ou à l'aide aux PME. Donc, tout un tas d'outils qui nous permettent de rester à l'écoute et de pouvoir imaginer quel pourrait être le futur.
Did you want to add something, Val?
Well, Occo made a very good point, and that is capital intensity for innovations in this industry is very, very important. And what we are trying to do all the time is try to find innovations that can, on the one hand, be capital light, but on the other hand, try to work in each of our investments, our portfolio companies, with large corporations that can help develop young companies over time.
Okay, final question. You're going to look in your crystal ball, all of you, and tell us about the significant evolutions in the coming months or years. Where are the key topics that we should be keeping our eyes on? Val, could you start the ball rolling? What do you see?
Well, what I see is that we're going to go through an enormous dog's breakfast of energy moving forward. We will see many what is currently called clean tech as sustainable innovation becoming part of large corporations. And that means that clean tech, which was until recently maybe a few $100 billion market, will become part of the multi-trillion core energy industry. That is very important. And the winners will be those large corporations that embrace innovation in the best possible and the most aggressive way. Because in the end of the day, it will all be about how do we adopt innovation into our core business.
Steve, energy technology is notoriously slow compared with other technologies, computers and everything. Where's the innovation going to come from in something which finds it hard to keep up the pace?
Well, that's my favorite subject, but I'll try to be brief and be specific. I think, of course, natural gas and any place that shale gas is available, notably in North America, is cheap, and now opportunities for new technology around dealing with natural gas are very interesting to us. In particular, I think we can make single cycle combustion of natural gas much more efficient. I think the need to transport it in places that don't have a pipeline infrastructure requires the ability to store large volumes of natural gas. Also in other areas, one that probably you haven't thought of, although I drive a Tesla every day to work and enjoy it. It does take a while to charge up, and one can imagine using technology like our compressed air motor for vehicle applications. It refills like gasoline. It's just as clean, and if you get the efficiency high enough, it's got great range. And the last one I'll mention, as came up a couple times today, is clean water, making fresh water in a more efficient, scalable, and less energy-intense way. And I think all those are very possible between now and 2020.
Ok, et François, votre boule de cristal.
Je dirais que l'expérience tend à nous montrer finalement que les innovations les plus rapides ou les plus fondamentales proviennent de la combinaison de deux forces, à la fois changement politique et en même temps un changement technologique. Donc si on reprend les technologies de l'innovation concernant l'énergie, on pourrait dire que ce que l'on observe en R&D actuellement sur le stockage tend à montrer, et ce que fait LightSail est aussi un bon exemple, tend à montrer que on assiste probablement à un changement majeur, puis quand on voit les sommes qui sont aussi en jeu, du paradigme. Et on pourrait imaginer que les schémas de production-distribution, et encore plus pour la distribution, si on la couple avec justement les technologies de l'information, va être the next big thing. Et si on prend l'efficacité énergétique, dont on a débattu aussi tout à l'heure, qui est une notion assez élastique autour des flux ou différents canaux de production ou de consommation, on va voir aussi un couplage très fort entre le développement technologique et la mise en place ou l'évolution de politiques qui vont permettre ces investissements. Et donc tout ça fonctionne de manière très interdépendante. Et puis sur le plan géopolitique, on peut dire aussi que ce qui se passe en Asie, hors le Japon et la Corée, donc principalement pour la Chine et l'Inde, nous laisse penser qu'il va y avoir une augmentation dans les 10 ans qui viennent d'innovation provenant de ces pays. L'Afrique aussi pourrait nous surprendre avec la croissance qui s'affirme et donc nous permettre de voir de belles innovations. En un mot, vous dire aussi peut-être en conclusion qu'il faut aussi être très modeste parce qu'on s'aperçoit que par rapport à toutes ces anticipations de mutations technologiques et de leurs implications, que non seulement l'histoire nous a souvent montré qu'elle pouvait être démentie, mais aussi parce que l'innovation pourrait bien venir en fait de la manière, ou pourrait concerner la manière d'innover. Et si on prend l'exemple d'Internet, qui a fait exploser récemment la capacité, la disponibilité à traiter de l'information, et donc le nombre d'humains qui peuvent être connectés, coopérer ensemble, on peut penser que de ce nouveau système global, je dirais presque neuronal, vont naître très, très vraisemblablement de superbes et grandes surprises.
Okay, and Occo, you have the first word, the last word.
Thank you. If you ask me, what are the innovations that I think will be very exciting in the few coming years? I talked about the big ones over the coming decades, but things that are already happening right under our noses, but still need to pop up. I think it's gas to transport. It's an enormously good business case. In less than a year, a truck driver in the US gets return on capital from converting his truck to LNG from diesel. Secondly, it's figuring out how here in Europe we're going to fit in all those renewables in our energy system. We're running against the boundaries with negative prices in some countries at some times, with very big spikes on other times. So fitting in the consumer in terms of how we price and how they behave. And the third one, which I'm personally the most passionate about, is how we build the energy systems in developing countries. Globally, our energy system is growing with 1.5% per year. And by the way, it's declining in OECD. It's 2.5% or almost 3% if you talk about power. In non-OECD power, it's close to 5%. So there are complete new systems that are being built as we speak. So that's the same as we did 50 to 100 years ago here in Europe. So that's an enormously exciting moment to right from day one fit in some of your exciting technologies around energy storage, around solar, etc. And that, I think, is a really exciting story in the coming years.
Perfect, and they finished exactly on time. So thank you very much indeed. A big round of applause. Let's have a quick look to see if there are any Twitters. I'll take one question from Twitter if there is. There we are. For each speaker, so one word to define innovation. You did it in a few sentences. Do it in one word. Well.
In one word, I would say invention meets with commercialization.
Okay.
If it is one word, it's the future.
Okay. Steve?
I would say that it's something that's completely unexpected.
That was my word.
Say it in Dutch, then it'll count as a new word. Nobody will understand it. Right, I'll take one question from the room, if there are any questions. Yes, there is, from our friend up here. You can ask a question, and if you could start off by telling us who you are. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nick Kwang. I'm coming from Université, and had a question that's linked to the report that was presented at the beginning. The report talks about the disruption from unconventional fossil fuels. It can actually have a negative effect on the renewables disruption. I was wondering how all these other disruptions that you have talked about today, they will play together in the coming years.
Yeah, so that's a bit of a question around how do fossil fuels and renewables compete within all these new technologies. I think in that sense, the good news or the bad news is that by 2050, in the current course, we'll be using so much fossil fuels that we better make sure we have new technologies to extract more fossil fuels and use the renewables. Because as we grow demand with 1.5% per year in the current course, we will need more than 100 million barrels a day, 105 million, 110 million barrels a day. We can only get that kind of fossil fuels out of the ground with the new technologies. And on top of that, we will need the renewables. So it's actually the end-end.
Perfect. Any quick question? No, I think we've exhausted the curiosity of the room. Thank you very much indeed for a very dynamic roundtable about innovation. Big round of applause. Dank u wel. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.